What up and welcome. Nets Celtics, our second broadcasted game of the week. Big pivotal matchup between two teams fighting for top spots and top seeding in an Eastern Conference that is exceptionally tight. Celtics losers of 3 of their last 6 despite getting Amari Swift back. He's averaging just 22.6 points, well below his season average since recovering from that broken ankle. Meanwhile, the Nets, their elite offense, number 2 in the nation in the NBA, number 5 three-point shooting team, but their defense has really hurt them. Ranked number 19th in the NBA as we get underway. I think the storylines of this one, obviously the implications of where each team is going to end up at the top of the Eastern Conference, if they can get there, as Louis Morgan kicks scoring off. He's had an exceptional season, leading the league right now in three-point shooting. But this is a huge opportunity just to avoid the play-in. I think there's a very real chance that some of these teams, either of these teams, could end up in the play-in if they cannot remain consistent with their play thus far. You look at 1 through 7 in some order. Any given day it changes between Boston, Brooklyn, Orlando, Chicago, the Heat, the Pacers. Those are your 6. I'm definitely forgetting one, but this is a really great Eastern Conference right now at the top, and any one day can completely shift that pendulum to the opposite side. For Boston, I guess we could start there as they get off to a pretty good start here, up by 8. Amari Swift is the difference maker of this one. He's an overpowering guard or forward, as you could very well tell. He gets rolling, and when he does, this is a team that's tough to stop. What's going to be the challenge for them is guard play. Latrell Appling is a perfectly fine point guard. He's not an elite defender. Tyrese Halliburton is still good, but he's in his 30s. He's not the high-flying version of himself that was in New Orleans for many years for the Pelicans that helped them win a championship. He isn't what he was before, and that's obviously going to be detrimental for a Celtics team that's probably going to have to go through an Eastern Conference that'll feature likely Bryton Reed and Louis Morgan here, Orlando with Trey Hunter, Javon Stokes with Chicago, CJ McCoy with Indiana, Ja Morant with Miami, Dwayne Qualls with the Bucks. That's the team I didn't mention earlier. The guards are so elite in the Eastern Conference, 1 through 7. The Celtics not being able to match that, I think, is their one downfall. Now, of course, no real teams can match Amari Swift at the forward position, but that's still a huge ask as Rashawn Matthews gets a floating 3 to go for the Nets as they take a lead on some free throws. It's going to be a challenge for them, and I think this is a pivotal moment in the Celtics' mark. They had that Kareem Robinson season. He obviously departs. They've been doing their best to try to refill the cupboard as Rashawn Matthews, offensive board, league leader in rebounds, gets that to go, and the Nets immediately up 6. It's going to be a challenge, I think, for the Celtics, but so long as that man right there is rolling, the Celtics have an opportunity. Meanwhile, the Nets, they've been up and down all season. Of course, that's been no surprise. The question mark on this team is always, what's the future? Do they go with their big 3? Is it Rashawn Matthews and Louis Morgan and Bryton Reed moving forward? We haven't seen this team healthy in the playoffs, and they made the the Eastern Conference Finals a season ago, albeit helped by the injury to Jalen Justice, as Brandon Ingram, the buyout man, gets a bucket there to go. Here's Jonathan Shays pulling up and burying a 3 to pull within 2. The Nets, though, they've got that hanging over them. And as great as their offense is, their defense has really struggled this season. And so those 3 guys can be awesome on offense, but they really need, as odd as it is, Sasha Kasparov, who was their buyout guy from Memphis. He's injured right now with an ankle injury. I think this team is probably at their best with Rashawn Matthews at the 4 and Sasha Kasparov at the 5. But they've done a phenomenal job, as you can see right now, spaced out. The floor is open. Allow Bryton Reed to get rolling downhill. Allow Louis Morgan to get rolling downhill. Rashawn Matthews is a very formidable three-point threat. He's able to stretch the floor. They just, that other position, that depth is really challenged them as Amari Swift gets the foul and the bucket. That, I think, is the big plot of this one. If they don't get rolling in the playoffs, fully healthy, of course, what does this team look like? They were without Rashawn Matthews last season when they made that run. They've tried their damnedest to make this three-man group work. So far, it has not. Rashawn Matthews gets a 3 to go there. But it's a big opportunity, I think, for both squads. I think there's a lot riding on this. Amari Swift, I don't think he's on the verge of asking out, but you always have to be careful of it, right? As Brighton Reed pulls up and buries a three-pointer, finally getting a jumper to go. That's not the great future, right? The Magic have kind of put the kibosh on a lot of great teams and players over the last couple seasons making their runs. The Eastern Conference is young, but you always have to be cognizant of what the future looks like as we shift to the fourth quarter, and I think that's why it's a huge season for the Celtics and the Nets to prove some semblance, and a great feed inside by Louis Morgan, some semblance of, hey, we can contend for a championship, and I think between Amari Swift and Xavier Carter, you feel like you can do it. It's just getting that other piece, and it previously didn't really work. Louis Morgan can't get that to go as we head to the fourth quarter. Obviously, every bucket here, make and miss on the screen. Amari Swift to the rack, draws the foul. He'll go to the line for a couple free throws. One of the more inconsistent forwards as he has really struggled from the free throw line, particularly in this game. Not exceptionally consistent. That jumper won't fall. It's a 6-point game, and this is where I think the Nets have the advantage over Boston. You've got two guys between Louis Morgan and Brighton Reed who can take over a game. Rashawn Matthews can do that, but he's just not as elite of it. He's a bit of a back-down kind of guy. But those two, especially, I think this is the flaw of the Celtics. Where do you go right now? Because Latrell Appling is a minus defender. Amari Swift can't get that 3 to go. He struggled in the second half, as you saw briefly. Tyrell Kemp, who's guarding right now Louis Morgan, is fine, but Louis Morgan is a really great offensive piece. Again, Tyrese Halliburton, veteran, not quite as polished as Xavier Carter, gets that bucket to go. Xavier Carter and Rashawn Matthews are awesome, but in the final minutes of big playoff games, it's not very often that the ball goes into the post. It's typically running through wings and guards, and I just don't know that the Celtics defense is capable of doing that. You saw it briefly in the pregame card. It's a middle-of-the-pack offense. It's a middle-of-the-pack defense. You can talk yourself into, as a sick jumper there from Louis Morgan, you can talk yourself into the Nets team because you say, yeah, their defense isn't great, bottom 12 in the league, but their offense is phenomenal. And if that offense is rolling, as Brighton Reed gets rolling right there, they can outscore teams. The Celtics is kind of like, well, if the offense isn't going, do we really trust the defense? And if the defense isn't going, can we really trust the offense? As Rashawn Matthews turns aside Tyrese Halliburton. So I think this is a great embodiment of what these two teams are. The Celtics they're a tease right now as Amari Swift pull-up transition 3 misses everything. Jeez, not great, Bob. As Brighton Reed here has to fire one up late shot clock. That won't fall. Latrell Appling. We got a 7-point game, 2 minutes to go. They'll push in transition. Amari Swift wants another 3. Won't get that to go. That one stings. Those are his first 2 misses from deep in this one. Brighton Reed can't get that jumper to fall either. A little bit of a defensive showcase, not necessarily something we'd expect with the Nets here, as it's 64-57 with a buck and change left to go. See if they can try to put this thing on ice. Here comes Brighton Reed to the rack. Pull-up jumper goes. 66-57. Of course, all of these are 8-minute simmed-up steps, so we'll get the full ones at the end. Inside they go. Stolen by Rashawn Matthews, and that's pretty much going to do it. Pull-up three-pointer from Brighton Reed won't go. It doesn't really matter. 9-point game. Inside we find Xavier Carter. That also is off, as this one now just kind of rounds out the ball game. Inside they go for a foul. Cosmetic at this point. The Nets are going to walk out of Boston with a huge win, much needed win against a team that they are trying to contend with for a top spot in the Eastern Conference. 3 from Amari Swift finally falls, but 68-60. We end up at 131-107. Big night from Brighton Reed. He started slow, as you saw there, but ends up with 33. Rashawn Matthews, 25, 26, and 9. Huge night from him. Amari Swift and Xavier Carter, 33 and 21 apiece, but not a great defensive showing from the Celtics. They're trying to find their way back into it. They fall to 43 and 26. Nets improve to 46 and 22. We've got our league update coming up next, and then we're closing out the regular season in the next couple weeks. Coming back to you then.